I call on the Leader of the Fianna Fáil Group.
We're short 4 million to cover voids for 2020 members. We're short 5 million to cover the discretionary funding in each of the 5 area committees for 2020. And the reason for the problem we currently find ourselves in now is that Paschal Donoghue is taking 8.4 million from Dublin City Council in equivalent rates that we were due from the transition of properties to Irish Water, which we were informed by government in 2014 would be cost neutral on Dublin City Council. We in the Fianna Fáil Group want Dublin City Council to be treated in the same manner as EirGrid in terms of the global valuation apportionment being applied to Irish Water properties in the city, and the Minister to refrain from taking 8.4 million from the 2020 budget. The valuation applied to EirGrid is to apportion their global valuation based on location of clusters of control centres, 2 of which of them are in Dublin, and we want Minister Paschal Donoghue to refrain from taking 8.4 million from the city based on self-same principle as EirGrid, and not to apply a global valuation of Irish water properties based on population, but to treat our global valuation as you treat EirGrid for the 25+ Irish water properties that are located in the city. There are children, Lord Mayor, going to school from hotels who are afraid to tell their friends they've no home. Dublin City Council has a shortfall of 4 million to cover voids in the draft budget for 2020, which means Brendan Kenny cannot afford to pay the amount required to make homes safe and available to children who are living in emergency accommodation and eating their dinner off bits of cardboard on the streets of our capital city. And in order to get the money to pay to make these homes safe to house those homeless children, the CEO is asking us to increase rents on our own tenants. Yet every time Owen Murphy is asked about children in emergency accommodation, he says he's doing everything he can, money is not an issue, planning takes time, building, construction, it all takes time. But Minister, we have the homes, they're already built, planning permission is not an issue. We can accommodate up to, I think, 1,000 voids if you just give us that amount of money and not only pay 45% of the cost which costs to turn voids around. Lastly, Lord Mayor, we have a discretionary budget to meet social and other needs of our citizens, including, for example, age-inclusive programmes for vulnerable people in our areas. If Paschal Donoghue agrees not to take 8.4 million from City Council's revenue base, it will allow us to continue to meet these needs.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Now call on the Leader of the Green Party.
Lord Mayor, this budget represents an abject failure by Fine Gael to honour both their funding commitments to the Council and their self-proclaimed support of local government and community decision-making. This is a budget that will see the most vulnerable Dubliners pay for the largesse of a government that states time and time again to those people, you're not important to us. There are no funds for you. No funds for your streets, no funds for your affordable housing, no funds to safeguard your children on their way to school or to keep them warm in their homes. This budget is the Irish system of local government in its death throes. This is a financial sleight of hand by Fine Gael that will leave a black hole in the city's finances that every Dubliner will suffer as a result of. Fine Gael ministers, right up until this September, were still promising officials in DCC that the creation of Irish Water would be revenue neutral for local authorities and that any Irish water-related losses would be offset in 2020 by a direct government grant. Now central government are yet again, when called on to appropriately fund services in the city, refusing to cover those costs, leaving the city with an 8.4 million loss. This burden cannot be placed on low-income households and will most likely find its way to considerable increases in business rates. Fianna Fáil have acted in a deeply dishonest way here. We will not be voting for this budget today, and Fine Gael, has been acting in a deeply dishonest way on this matter.
Members,
we will not be voting. We will not be voting.
Sorry, members, it's not a kindergarten; it's a budget meeting. Thank you.
We will not be voting for this budget, and we recommend that it be adjourned until the Minister responds to the Council's request to honour their promises and his promises that the Finance Department made to the city.
Thank you. Call on the Leader of the Independent Group.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, we had asked that the meeting would be standing orders would be suspended to take our motion for deferral. I understand that there has to be some grandstanding done But on the night that Ireland are playing, I would appreciate if people wouldn't waste as much time as practically possible, and if they would support their motion to suspend the meeting based on the simple arguments that the most disadvantaged in society, which constitute a lot of our tenants, shouldn't be expected to pay for a shortfall in core funding. So I'm asking you now, with the power to suspend standing orders or put it to a vote for 3/4 of the council to suspend standing orders, and we seek a meeting with the relevant minister to ask him to properly fund local government.
Thanks, Councillor. Given that we triggered the group system and a number of groups have spoken, I propose we spend the next 8 minutes concluding that debate, and at the end we'll consider then the options that are in front of us. So thank you, Councillor. Councillor, Leader of the Fine Gael group.
Well, Lord Mayor, I'll speak for the Fine Gael group. We have constructively engaged with Cathy Finton and her staff, as did all the budgetary group. I want to thank Seamus McGrattan for chairing those meetings. Lord Mayor, it's a responsibility of Dublin City Council every year to pass a budget, and we now find this group constituting the Dublin Agreement reneging on that commitment, having already not delivered on their first hurdle. This is the second fence they have fallen at. They have reneged on their responsibilities, and it doesn't augur well for the future. Now, to start talking about Irish Water and 8.6 million, that pales into insignificance compared with the other elements in the budget, which you are all well aware of. The 32 million in arrears owed to this council by tenants in social housing that has not been addressed. I want to hear why Fianna Fáil and the Greens and Labour, what they have to say about that, rather than a simple issue like Irish Water. There are other issues where we will have to raise rates, toll charges and whatever. But the elephant in the room is the issue of the failure of tenants. And that is an indictment, Lord Mayor, of Dublin City Council officials as well as everyone else. So we will not listen to criticisms of Fine Gael. I know the Green councillor was getting mixed up there between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, but we are in government. We have handled our responsibilities, and it is up to this council to deliver a budget rather than attempting to walk away from their responsibilities.
Thank you, Councillor. On behalf of the Labour Party.
Well, Lord Mayor, the Labour group has never walked away from its responsibilities in this council, but the government has put this council in an impossible position. This is the government that refuses to pay commercial rates on properties, that refuses to do what Councillor McCartan has asked them to do for the last several years, in fairness to him, to reform the local property tax so the people who have bought houses since 2013 will have to pay them. It's the government that has broken their promises in relation to the voids. It's the government that is now breaking its promise in relation to Irish Water. The fact is that this government owes Dublin City Council hundreds of millions of euro and refuses to exercise its responsibilities, yet tells us we should exercise our responsibilities. Dubliners paid over the last year about 70 million in local property tax. And I'm a supporter of local property tax and I defend local property tax. But we get 3.9 million out of that, while the government that Councillor McCartan and his Fine Gael friends support takes about 70 million from us every year in that fund. They cannot have it both ways. They cannot demand of us that we exercise our responsibilities when this government abjectly fails to honour its commitments, its duties and its responsibilities to the people of Dublin. You know, the people of Dublin this year won't even get the miserable discretionary fund that we were able to put into community facilities because this government is reneging on their commitments and on their duties to the Irish people and the people of Dublin. The Labour group will work hard to achieve an agreement, but we demand that government exercises its responsibilities. We support the proposal that we defer this meeting, we defer agreement on the budget until we get an agreement and a meeting with the Minister. Remember, he is called the Minister for Housing, for Planning and for Local Government, and all three, he's an abject failure, and in my view he should resign.
The Sinn Féin group.
Good morning, I just want to start by thanking Cathy Finton and the staff and all the councillors who took part in the Budget Consultative Group. We met on 3 occasions. When we first met, there was a shortfall of almost 16 million, and councillors worked hard to bring it back to get a budget that balanced, which is the budget we see before us. But it's the budget, I think, that we can all agree that nobody wants. We are being forced to increase commercial rates, to increase parking rates, to increase our rents on tenants, and to cut our area discretionary fund. As others have said, it's a decision. If councillors want to make them decisions, that we should be left ourselves to make them decisions and to argue among ourselves which way we want and what our vision for the city is. But that decision has been taken out of this chamber's hands by the minister, by reneging on the promise that he would give a grant to take away the shortfall from Irish Water. So I would agree with my colleagues that we should adjourn, we should write to the minister, and let us get on with the debate within the chamber of what we want to do for Dublin, how we want to see Dublin going forward. But that should be our decision. It should be made by the elected members in this chamber, not by an official or a minister down in the Customs House.
Thank you, Councillor McGrattan. On behalf of the Social Democrats.
Thank you, Arvera. We will not be supporting this budget as presented before us tonight. This is an austerity era budget indicative of an economy that is being poorly managed. Fine Gael want the public at large to believe that they are a party of fiscal competence, and yet here we are tonight about to add local governments to the list of basic democratic necessities that are unaffordable in Fine Gael's Ireland. And we should be very clear about this. In this budget, it is the citizens of Dublin who are being asked to pay for the incompetence of Pascal Donoghue and Owen Murphy. In Fine Gael's Ireland, 780,000 people are living in poverty, and this budget expects us to raise rents and social housing tenants by an average of €160 per household. Ratepayers in this city are already operating in a haze of Brexit uncertainty, yet should have to pay more just to keep Fine Gael's lie going that ours is an economy that has recovered. The citizens of Dublin are no fools. They're the same people who have been crying out for an adequately resourced policing service. They're the ones on medical lists awaiting much needed treatments. They've had to endure the tantrums of a spoiled brat of a housing minister. They're the ones who've had to boil their drinking water. They're paying through the nose for their waste collections, are being devoid of basic council services in Fine Gael's Ireland. I think it's important to be very clear about this. In this chamber, we've 14 days to pass the budget, and I do expect at some point we will do so. The Fine Gael government owes this council a substantial amount of money which they can pay and alleviate the crushing burden they're expecting us to place on the people of Dublin. I am under no circumstances going to compound the poverty that we witness every day, but 8.4 million is the figure that I owe through the Irish Water grant that has been withheld from Dublin City Council. That figure equates to about a 4% increase on commercial ratepayers in this city. I am imploring the Minister to show a modicum of leadership here that will alleviate that unnecessary burden. Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of this People Before Profit Group.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. There's no doubt that we would like to sit here tonight and pass a budget that would actually provide the services that it's meant to do for the citizens of Dublin. But with the budget that we see before us, that's not what's being provided. It's an austerity budget that's putting the shortfallings back onto the citizens of Dublin. While we're trying to plug that gap for the voids that's already been mentioned, we're not even putting any money of the services back in to fix those issues within housing maintenance that tenants are already paying for. That list has gone back as far, for some people, as far as 5 to 6 years. We're scraping at the bottom of the barrel to try and find money to plug this gap. And it seems to be the best case scenario for Owen Murphy would be for this council to fall, so that he could come in and ride shot over all the decisions that we're sitting here trying to fix and put back together for the damage that he has caused. So until the Minister comes together and agrees to pay the outstanding bills that are already in place for Dublin City Council, we won't be supporting this budget. We'll be calling for a deferral for next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And on my own behalf, I think it's really important that Dublin City Council has a responsibility to pass this budget, and I want to thank both Cathy and the members of the Budget Consultative Group from all parties in regard to this. But unfortunately, what both that group and Cathy have brought back here are unpalatable choices. And while we have the responsibility of passing a budget, we also have the responsibility to stand up for the city. And that is our first responsibility. And I would be saying to all of the parties here, I accept you're making political points on all sides, but for the next 2 weeks, we need to put the most amount of pressure on the decision makers who've taken 8.4 million from this city. They've done that not to raise revenue or to save revenue, but they've done it because a bureaucratic decision is redistributing money away from Dublin to other counties. In some cases, counties that don't even have Irish water assets. Now, I don't believe any government can stand over that decision. I don't believe any government would want to stand over that decision. And I believe we should use the 2 weeks that we have to put the most amount of pressure to ensure that they wake up to that decision and that they restore the 8.4 million. In the meantime, all parties obviously have to work to try and pass a budget. And it is my view, following on Councillor Perry, Councillor Gannon, Councillor Heney's call and others, that we would adjourn the budget meeting until next Monday at 6:15 p.m. to discuss the budget. Can I have I have 3 proposals for that budget. Is that agreed? Okay. Councillor McDonagh, you've indicated to speak.
Yeah, Ardvera, on a point of order, I want to
Sorry, Councillor McDonagh, can I just add one thing? Apologies. I've just circulated a letter which I was asked to write by Councillor McGrattan at the last meeting to Pascal O'Donoghue on that issue of the 8.4 million, and equally there was a letter written to the Taoiseach and to Minister O'Murphy on the same issue, so that's circulated with the same wording. Apologies, Councillor McDonagh, for interrupting you.
Okay, Gurmagad. I want to request or propose the suspension of standing orders to facilitate the holding tonight of the special meeting which the Sinn Féin group has required to address the disastrous mishandling of O'Devany Gardens by the ruling group on this council and their misleading of this council and of our citizens in this city. I think it's imperative that we hold this special meeting tonight, and I'm proposing the suspension of standing orders.
Thank you, Councillor McDonagh. Sorry, members. Thank you, Councillor McDonagh. I appreciate you coming in on the issue. I have to say, I think it's a really serious issue, the issue of O'Devany Gardens, and I think some of the developments today I was incredibly disappointed with. I think the decision of the Minister to essentially release the contents of a letter with uncommon speed through the Freedom of Information Act, and I would call it uncommon because it normally takes months, but for my reply not to be in the public domain is something I hugely regret. And I'm going to take this opportunity now to circulate the reply, which I have, because I think that out of respect to members, that's something that should happen. Both the Minister's first letter and the reply are now being formally circulated. So Councillor McDonagh has put forward the proposal that we suspend standing orders to discuss the O'Devany Gardens. That's in keeping with the meeting, if the meeting agrees to that. So, sorry. Okay, I'm going to. Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's been indicated that it's not within the standing orders to suspend them. So I'm going to. 1 second there. The manager has indicated that the law agent would come in on this point to advise me, if that's okay. So we can take it in for the law agent. Sorry, members, just could be.
It's not open to this meeting to consider anything other than the budget. It's specifically provided for in the Local Government Act. It's a special meeting, and the only business to be considered is the budget at this meeting.
Councillor McDonagh, you have earlier put forward a motion to me, a correspondence to me, calling for a special meeting on this topic, which wasn't permitted because 3 days would be the required period to give notice for such a meeting. Given that it's not possible to suspend standing orders or discuss anything else at this meeting, it would now be open for you to put forward a request for a special meeting at a future date. And as I say, I will consider that as part of the normal process of doing so. There is a meeting now next Monday that we have scheduled. Councillor, I'm going to take as many questions on this because I have no issue with discussing this topic. Councillor Doolan.
I just want to formally second the request for a meeting. I think it's of the utmost importance we have it as soon as possible to deal with the misinformation that was put out there during the last City Council meeting. And I agree, I appreciate you circulating this letter on Ardvera, but I think you're doing it under duress in response to a Freedom of Information software.
No duress, Councillor Doolan. Don't put words in my mouth, Councillor Doolan.
No. Let me finish.
No duress.
I didn't interrupt anybody. I never interrupted anybody. Please, protection of the chair, let it hold. And I think we welcome the circulation of this letter, but you could have done it in the last week or so. You could have circulated it, but you didn't, because it's dated the 13th of November. But let's debate that at the forthcoming meeting. Let's get the truth out in the open, and then I think it clearly shows that we were misled at the last meeting. And I think.
Okay, Councillor Dunn. So the law agent has indicated that we're not permitted to do any other business other than the business of passing the budget.
On a point of order.
We've adjourned that meeting. I'll take Councillor McDonagh on it because it was his initial proposal, but I don't intend to take anybody else. Councillor
Chair,
McDonagh.
just on a point of order. Does that mean we can't make any decisions? But there's nothing to stop us having a debate, is there?
Again, I'll get the law.
Have a debate.
But I suppose the issue here is that under the Local Government Act, what the Councillor McDonagh and the Sinn Féin group had been looking for was a special meeting. There are rules under the Local Government Act on how a special meeting is called, and yet you need 3 days clear notice for that meeting. That obviously was not given to members, so it is not possible to have a special meeting now. That's the...
Members, it is open for people to apply for a special meeting in the normal course of the events. Councillor McDonagh, is that okay?
Yeah, but can I just respond very briefly?
Yeah, of course.
I think, well, the sense we would prefer that special meeting.
Sorry, if you could, Donna, could you deselect your, thank you.
Obviously we would prefer...
Sorry, somebody else? Can everyone deselect, please? Thank you. Councillor McDonagh.
Okay, obviously we'd prefer the special meeting tonight given the urgency of this issue. That's plain, certainly from the letters that have been circulated. However, I can see the logic of holding the special meeting after the presumably adjourned budget meeting next Monday. I just have to make an observation. It's interesting that we sought the suspension of standing orders. The particular standing order which governs special meetings cites the legislation, and Deirdre mentioned that as a reason. The law agent gave a different reason, which is quite interesting. But we're happy to await the special meeting because it will be more substantive than simply extending this meeting.
Councillor McDonagh, I understand there's special legislation specifically for the statutory budgetary meeting, and that's what's done. I think we've adjourned the motion. It's up to councillors. It's up to councillors to put forward any proposals that they have. I've indication of standing orders. Is it on that topic?
It is literally just saying you said you were circulating 2 letters.
Okay.
One of which was your reply, and I haven't received that.
Okay. There is sufficient copies being circulated. So, okay. Councillor Ring. Just deselect it. Yeah, if everyone could deselect.
Yeah, time on air. Which may be helpful, Lord Mayor. I just noticed in the briefing documents we got on page 33 and 35, it mentions about elected members will be aware of a commitment given by the government that the Irish water transition process would be revenue neutral for local authorities, and you also mentioned that in your letter to the Minister Donoghue. Just, it might be very helpful for us if we see where that was. Is that in writing? Was it verbally? Wherever, just to give us that, because I think it's a big piece of our ammunition in terms of tackling the government on this. We said it 3 times, and I think newer members will find it useful to.
Can I bring Cathy in to conclude the meeting? Can I bring Cathy in to conclude the meeting? Thank you, Cathy. On that point of Councillor Ring.
Councillor Ring, that comment about it being revenue neutral, I'll get the original statement, but it was a kind of comment given at the creation of Irish Water. Just to clarify in terms of the setting of the meeting, this meeting is established under Section 103 of the Local Government Act 2001 as amended, and you're required to have a statutory budget meeting for the consideration of the budget. Nothing else, it's just it. So we're not trying to be awkward, that's what we're here for tonight and nothing else, and this meeting is now adjourned.
Members, that adjourns the meeting until next Monday. Thank you.
Oh, God.
Match time,